Hey there, and welcome to another episode of the podcast. As you can hear, I'm in the car. Today, we're going to talk about the national standards because I understand that there's a little bit of confusion, and I want to go through the timeline with you and, explain sort of like how it happened, why it's all being discussed now, why we're having drafts, why there's discussion, why there's a bit of hoo-ha going on in the community at the moment, and just sort of hopefully at the end of this you'll come away with a little bit more of a clear understanding about what's happening, why, who's who in the zoo, all those kinds of things. I just want to preface this one though by saying everything that I'm about to say is entirely my own opinion. Okay, I'm not here speaking for anybody, and I'm not here speaking for any organisations or groups or anything like that I'm associated with. This is purely and wholly just me talking with you, sharing my own thoughts, my own opinions on the drive home in the car. Okay, so the national standards came about as a result of a Senate committee hearing into mental health and suicide back in 2021. As a result of that report, one of the key findings, or perhaps the key finding, was that we need to have consistency between the two peak membership bodies in terms of what qualifies somebody to be a counsellor and things like that, right? There are a few things, I'll go over them, don't worry. But this is how it all came about. There were inconsistencies, there was discussion, thought, hey, wouldn't it be a better idea if in that self-regulated industry, you still be self-regulated, but you at least have some agreement on things. And so I'm abbreviating it, but this is pretty much what happened, okay? And you can go and read all of this. You can do a little search online for the Senate Select Committee hearing into mental health and suicide in 2021, and you can download the full report there. So that kind of like kicked things off, this need for the standards. And a little while later, about 18 months or so later, in 2023, I think it was May 2023, from memory. I'm driving, so I don't have the papers in front of me. But there was a meeting. The meeting was attended by the Department of Health and Aged Care, the Honourable Emma McBride, who is was then her title then was the Assistant to the Mental Health Minister, or Assistant Mental Health Minister. It was also attended by representatives from the two big bodies, ACA and PACFA. There was also a third party there, the external consultant. They're the ones who have been putting everything together, and you'll know them. I can't remember the name off the top of my head. Allen and Clark, I think it is. But anyway, that was pretty much, who was there, maybe a few other key stakeholders. And during that meeting, the federal government announced that they were going to contribute $300,000 of funding towards the development of the national standards for counsellors and psychotherapists in Australia. So that's how it kind of all got started, right? So there weren't any agendas or anything like that, okay? Let's just get that clear. There were no agendas at that time. Anywho, so this all happens, and then what happens is the development stage begins, and the consultants and, members from the peak bodies and the department, all having consultations with each other, and they put together a draft set of standards, and then they release that for consultation in, when was it, July last year. So it was released in July last year. And it was released, I was able to research that, of course, ACA and PACFA had it on their websites. I assume they emailed their members. I'm not with either of those bodies, but I would assume that they emailed their members and told their members about it. There was also on the department's website a link to the portal where you could go and complete a survey, share your thoughts and opinions, all those kinds of things. So, yeah, it was publicised and consultations were had. And from there, what happened was, so there was a 4-week window, right, where everybody could participate in an interview or consultation or fill out this online survey, online form. And then from there, what happened was people went away, made some revisions, and then released it again for everybody to have a say. That happened in November. And again, that was through consultations and stuff like that. Information was shared and people could participate in, have their say. So it all kind of finished in November 2024, and the draft was sort of closed off then. And, it's like, here it is, you can go and see it. So you can, even now, you can just do a Google search for draft national standards. It'll come up. Ask for the latest copy. It'll come up, and go and have a look at it. And I think it's really important that you do, because it does affect you if you're a counsellor, okay? Especially if you're a counsellor who has a diploma, right? Really affects you very, very significantly. So, yeah, and it's not hard to read. It's not full of jargon or legalese or anything like that. Far from it. It's very much written in lay terms. It's, as I said, you could pick it up and read it in a few minutes, but it takes you a lot longer to actually process what it all means and implications and things like that. But you can get the gist of it fairly quickly. So anyway, that's kind of what happened. And then where things are at now is, eventually, some point, looks like the draft standards could be moving up the line, and a new organisation has kind of been formed, and one of its priorities, as the only peak body representing vocationally qualified mental health professionals, not only diploma people, but other people who have mental health qualifications that are vocational. But anyway, they were recently formed, and so it was very high on their agenda. It was one of their priorities. They do a lot of things for a lot of different sectors within mental health, but at the moment, one of the main areas of focus is supporting and giving voice to the people who perhaps weren't maybe well represented. I don't know. I'm going to talk more about that in a minute. My view is that they weren't. I could be wrong, but my view is that they weren't. And I'll tell you why again. But anyway, give them a little bit of a voice. And anyway, as a result of that, an email was sent around over the weekend just gone. And, we were encouraged to share the email. I received it too. So I did. For me, sharing it meant just taking screenshots and putting it on my social media. So that's what I did, along with other information and stuff like that. So anyway, that went around, and, people started to, I guess, become more aware. So awareness started getting raised. And then a day or two after that, so it was just yesterday actually, there was a petition, and so I shared the petition. So the petition is not against the standards, okay? There's no issue with the standards, as far as I'm aware. There's no issue with the standards. In, what do you say? In concept, like, I think people think they're, good idea. The concern is that they aren't inclusive, and the concern is that, there are going to be significant implications for people with a diploma. And so that's what's happening at the moment. Now, I've got some interesting news to tell you, but before I do, I just want to share with you some research that I did and the findings of that research. And again, I'm just going to try and be super, I guess, objective as I possibly can be. Anyway, the research was that when I was looking at the timeline that I just shared with you then, when I was looking at that timeline, I came across other information, which I thought was really interesting. For example, PACFA did a really, really, really excellent job of being involved in the process right from the get-go. They were there right from the beginning and right through to now. They haven't stopped. Although I disagree with the position that PACFA take, I can still appreciate the effort and the work and the time and the energy that they have dedicated. Joanna and her team there have dedicated to getting these standards developed. Like, they have just done such an amazing job. And when I say that, what I'm referring to specifically is this. PACFA shared a lot of information consistently with members in all kinds of different ways. They had member consultations, they had webinars, they had Zoom meetings, they had information, regularly updated on the website. Like, they were really, really proactive. The other thing that they did that was, really, really good was they looked after relationships with people. So they had regular meetings. I think I read it was monthly meetings with key stakeholders, the third party consultants who were putting the standards together, the department, representatives from the Department of Health and Aged Care. So PACFA were doing that. Like, they were going there and they were, really, really, really proactive. And I can't take that away from them. I can't. They did an excellent job of advocating for the things that they really, really, truly believed in. And, one of the things that they truly believe in is that a diploma doesn't qualify you as, being a counsellor. In fact, if you want to be recognised as a counsellor with PACFA, it's a requirement that you have a tertiary education. And they've made no bones about that. They've never hidden it. It's one of the things that differentiates them from the ACA. Okay, so there's that. Now, the flip side of that, well, not really the flip side, but then I started thinking, okay, this is really interesting. What's been going on with the ACA? Let's have a look at, what they've been doing. And I have to say, I'm struggling to find any advocacy. I'm struggling. I could see occasional, mentions of a meeting here or there that was had. But when you look at what's available in terms of evidence, when you're doing research, I've got loads of evidence in front of me. PACFA went, to this meeting, that meeting, did that, reported back to the members on who they were meeting with, who they met with, what happened, what was discussed, what it could mean, so transparent. When you look at what the ACA did, I'm really struggling. I don't know if it's because I just haven't publicised, their actions that they took, and I don't know if it's because they didn't. I don't know. Did they just not put stuff on the website? I don't know. Were they in as regular communication with members as perhaps PACFA were? I don't know. But I mean, it's like tumbleweeds. It's really, really hard to find evidence. I mean, you can, as I said, you can find the odd things sort of here and there. But when you look at PACFA, it's like boom, 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 boom. Here's a post, here's a blog, here's a webinar, here's a Zoom link, here's this, here's that. It's like really thorough, really, really thorough. And I think, I don't know, I'm just drawing my own conclusions here based on what I was able to, discover when I was doing my own research. And again, if you've got different ideas or not ideas, but if you've got different um, awareness, different information, of course, let me know, because I, yeah, of course, I want to be informed, and I want you to be informed. I want other people to be informed. It's just that information isn't readily available. Anyway, I don't want to belabor the point, but I think my opinion, my sense, my gut feeling, my intuition is that if one membership body is showing up and being proactive, regularly having meetings, I think it's just human nature that you're going to get to know those representatives, right? Like, they're going to get to know Joanna. And her team are going to get to know the people at the department, and the third party, and they're all going to get to know each other. And I think that's great. I'm all about the rapport, but I think perhaps maybe because that wasn't happening with the ACA to that degree or extent, in terms of what I can find, and again, I could be wrong, I'm just wondering if maybe the development of the standards was a little bit skewed, perhaps, or a little bit influenced by PACFA. And I'm not saying anything bad about PACFA, I'm just like having an observation here. Because I guess if you're writing standards and you're just meeting with the same people all the time, and like just occasionally you meet with some others, I guess, I don't know, like, don't you think that maybe if you've got a good relationship with some people, you might be more inclined to take on board the things that they're saying? And when I look at the draft national standards, now I know this, I see them a little bit differently, and I feel like they read like a PACFA policy. It's just interesting. It's just interesting. Um, the reason I think that is because there's there's levels again. You know how I feel about the levels, but there's levels in there, and they're identifying people who have a diploma. They're calling that level foundational, and it says that they're not qualified basically to work. And I think that that's really disappointing. And I just wonder why ACA agreed to that. So I'll talk more about ACA in a moment, but I'm just confused. I don't understand why ACA agreed to that. Like, it would be interesting, useful, helpful to have some kind of explanation around why they did. Um, what else was I going to say? I've just lost my train of thought. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, why they agreed to it. And then the other thing that came out that made me feel like it was reading a PACFA policy more so than, an all-inclusive, all-encompassing set of standards, was that it also says in there that if you've got a diploma, you therefore aren't qualified to run a private practice. So yeah, that was my take on it, but I'd be interested to hear what yours is. In terms of the stories, I think it's really interesting to go and have a look at things like, I know, I'm that person that will go and read the boring stuff, but I find it really interesting to read the information that's available about PACFA, and I really love that they're, to a degree, quite transparent. There are things that maybe haven't been, in my opinion, but for the most part, I think they're pretty transparent. You can go and you can read about the CEO on the website. You can read her story and stuff like that. It's great. Um, and it gives you a context or a picture. So I was reading a paper that was introducing Joanna as, the new CEO that was going to be coming on board, and it was talking about her background and everything. I thought, okay, that's really great, handy information to have. And it kind of gives you, I think when you know somebody's story, it helps you understand them a little bit better in terms of what they do, and what they believe and what they value and things like that. So that was great. And then I wanted to just go and have a look at ACA. And it was, again, just really hard to find any information. saw was that there's been a change of, I don't know, structure of the board there. I saw that one of the documents about the standards in the early days mentioned that Jody, I think it's Mackenzie, I can't remember. I don't have it in front as I'm driving, but Jody, somebody, I think it was Mackenzie. She was the CEO at the time. So I don't know if she was the one that agreed to, that people with a diploma weren't qualified, and if she agreed to um, people with a diploma not being able to have a private practice or not, or if that was the current person. So the current person is the chair, and her name is Dee Hardy. And then I thought, okay, we'll go and have a look and see Dee's story, because I'm curious. Like, I want to know. I want to know, like, what's the background, what's her interest, stuff like this. And so, yeah, just went and had a little look, and I didn't do any deep research, don't worry, but I just was like, yeah, who is she? What does she do? Like, yeah. Anyway, Dee, yeah, she's got a private practice herself, I think. Yep, she does. I can't remember the name of it, but anyway, she's got a private practice, which is great. But also, it says on her website that she's got a diploma. And I thought, well, that's interesting. And I kind of sat up then, because I thought, okay, so here we've got the person who's like effectively in charge of the ACA, the ACA agreeing that people with a diploma won't be allowed to work and won't be allowed to supervise people and won't be allowed to have a private practice, yet the boss has a diploma. And then that got me doing more research. I was like, oh, well, who else is on the board? Like, what's going on here? So then I just started having a look at who else was on the board. And I could see that, now I'm going to get this number wrong because, as I said, I don't have it right in front of me right now. But it was like one or two of them had a diploma too. And one guy was studying for his diploma. And I thought, what is going on? This peak body is the peak body that recognises the contributions that counsellors that hold a vocational qualification make, right? It recognises that. The members of the board, including the chair, have diplomas, and yet they're kind of agreeing that they won't be able to work, or, work as counsellors, have a private practice, supervise people. I don't understand that. No, I don't know. Is it because I'm neurodivergent and I'm just like, I struggle with social things sometimes? And I mean, is that what's going on? Like, is this a Brooklyn thing, or does it not make sense to you either? I don't know. And why weren't they so involved? That got me questioning things as well, because I thought, okay, now I know this. Now I know that, there's at least two people on the board that have diplomas and somebody else that's going for one from the ACA. And yet they weren't as actively involved, I should say. From what I can see, again, I should say that. And two, like, why agree? It's just, it raised a whole lot of questions for me. I don't know. Does it raise any questions for you? Do you think that's, I don't know, strange? And then, yeah. So this petition is not about getting rid of standards or anything like that. This petition that's going around at the moment is to, I guess, give voice to people that have a diploma, and it's requesting that modifications be made to the draft standards before they're ratified. So there are recommendations in there around things like, restriction of trade and, recognition of qualification and, right to work and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah. Now, just fun facts. Did you know that in Australia, 80% of counsellors are women? And did you know that the median age is about 50 and that the average age is like 47 to 52? Now, some people have been saying to me, as a result of the petition going up, the email going up this week and stuff like that, some people have been saying, oh, will I be grandfathered? And I guess I just want to say, like, I'm not in the loop as far as all of that goes. Like, I have no clue, and I would never presume to tell you anything that I wasn't, hand on heart, sure of myself. Um, all I understand at this stage is that there's usually a grandfathering process. I understand that there's been discussion of one. I understand that nothing's been finalised. I don't know what it would involve or what it would look like. What I can share with you in my experience, having been a psychologist that went through this pretty much exact same thing all those years ago, there was a grandfathering and a bridging program for psychologists, and counselling tends to follow psychology a lot. So I would imagine that there'd be something like that. I would imagine, again, it's just me guessing here. It's an educated guess. I would say a grandfathering period would normally last 24 months. I mean, they might have something longer, who knows, but usually it would be about 24 months. And there would be, development of bridging programs. So a bridging program is a program that helps people who don't yet meet the criteria to cross the bridge to meeting it. And it's usually training and education, right? Usually a tertiary degree. I know. And I don't know if that will be the case this time, but I would have to say it would be, because the standard has a benchmark recommended that unless you've got that bachelor's, minimum under your belt, yeah, you're not going to be allowed to practice. So I was thinking, oh, would it be RTOs, that come along and do bridging programs and stuff like that? I'm not sure. And I wouldn't want to mislead you. I'm just sharing my own thoughts around it. Yeah. Is somebody else was saying, well, is it going to affect people who are in private practice, or will we all be okay? Will we come under the grandfathering? I honestly don't know. I don't know. What I can say confidently, though, is when I do, of course, I'll let you know. But that's assuming I know it before you do. But yeah, of course, I'll pass it on if I hear anything, and if I have permission to pass it on, I'll certainly do that. But for now, I'm not sure. Something else that's interesting is I've had some comments, as you may have seen, on the posts for the petition. And they're comments from people that perhaps aren't so supportive, let's just say. And the comments go usually along the lines of, it's too little too late, be quiet, shut your mouth, you're derailing everything, you're going to ruin it for all the counsellors, you had your chance, all this. So I guess what I want to say to that is a couple of things. I guess first off, you're right. There were plenty of opportunities for consultation to be had. And, if you're a member of PACFA, you were afforded all of those opportunities, right? I can see that clearly. And I feel that because that was your experience, maybe you're assuming, imagining, expecting that everybody had that experience. The reality is that they just didn't. For whatever reason, I don't know why, but they didn't. I can see that PACFA was really good at communicating things to its members. I can also see that ACA didn't have that same level of communication. So there's that. In terms of, it's too little too late, why now, all of this, I guess all I can really say to that is that in terms of me and my involvement, there's an association that's been recently formed, and it is specifically for people who have a vocational, so not a uni degree, a vocational qualification in mental health. And as somebody who sits on the advisory board to that organisation, um, I'm very, very passionate about making sure that people, in this instance that we're talking about here, because there are other things that the association does and other projects and other interests and stuff like that. But in terms of this that we're talking about today, I'm very passionate about it. And of course, I want to help wherever I can. But the reality is that this association was only recently formed. And yeah, I've got no control over that for those that have been asking me personally, like, why am I choosing now? But the other thing too is just like in terms of me personally, I don't think I've been quiet about advocating for diplomas. I mean, it's why I started the Diploma Counsellor Society 2 or 3 years ago as well. Anyway, so I just wanted to kind of address that. The other thing that I think is really, really interesting is when the consultations happened, um, eventually, like the final version of the draft was released. It's got a bit of a preamble and stuff like that. And anyway, you can go and read it for yourself on the website. But they say, like, we interviewed 30 people, and we received responses to the online survey from another 315 people. And it feels to me like they're pretty happy about that. I guess my concern is that I think, again, I don't remember if it's 7 or 9. I'm just going to say 9. I think PACFA have like 9,000 members as of their last annual report or something, so it's probably more now. But I think they have roughly about 9,000. ACA more. So I think ACA was, I don't know, I'm going to get it wrong. I think it was 14 or 15 for ACA. So, I mean, even if you put those two together, that gives you like 24,000 counsellors. Don't you think it's weird that only 30 had an interview? And don't you think it's weird that, the 315, like there are only 315 people that contributed to the online survey, and not all of those were counsellors? Some of those people were connected with training providers, the departments, I imagine, general public, anyone who wanted to have a say had an opportunity to do that. So that 315 isn't even representative of all the counsellors. So I just thought that was interesting. And even with PACFA doing all this advocacy and all this promotion, letting everybody know, how were there so few respondents? Does it make you wonder? Like, I'm just like, I really don't get that. I really don't get that. I mean, that's such a low conversion rate. Yeah, so there's that. And then anyway, I think the other really interesting thing is that was over the space of, I don't know, 2024, right? They had the consultation window open for 4 weeks in July last year, and then again in October. Anyway, so spanning over the course of a year, spanning over the course of, even if you just take these 8 weeks into account, it was spanning the course of 8 weeks. They had 345 total respondents, not all of whom were counsellors. Now, we put that petition up yesterday, not 24 hours ago, and I'd say it was probably 2 hours ago or so. No, maybe, 2 hours or so ago now. It had hit the 24-hour mark, and I thought, oh yeah, I'll just go and check how that's going. And we're at 480 signatures in 24 hours. Now, this is the bit that I really don't understand. There's only a handful of us that are trying to like raise awareness about this. I'm just putting it on my social media. I've shared it in my groups. I shared it to my stories. I put it on my Instagram story with a link to the petition. Did all of that. Asked everybody else, hey, if you can help out, sign and share. And so people have started signing and sharing, which is great. And I just think, like, if we can get 480 people responding to a petition that's essentially an online document in 24 hours, how on earth were there only 345 respondents to two separate, I was going to say bites of the apple, two separate shots, if you like, of getting respondents for over 8 weeks in total? I don't know. It doesn't feel right. Something's not math. The math isn't mathing. The math isn't mathing. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'll be interested to see what the final numbers are of the petition, like when it's closed down. I'll be interested to see what the final numbers are. But I guess it just raises more questions. Like, if we're able to do this just, ourselves, and I don't know, I'm not the ACA, I'm not PACFA, I don't have, money behind me doing all this. Is just me posting stuff on socials and asking other people to post it as well. And other people posting it too. But I mean, if we can do all of this just as, like, I want to say citizens, but I mean, like, just people. We're not big organizations with deep pockets and all of this, resources. We're not resource, we're just people. If we can get this kind of response in 24 hours it's 33% more response or respondents. there's an increase, 33%. So yeah, I'm just like, it's a can of worms. It kind of makes me want to go off down a rabbit hole in a way, because now I'm thinking, how could they have only had that many? Yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. It's just weird. I mean, they had so many resources. Both of them had so many resources. They see impact I'm talking about now. So many resources, and the backing of a department, and there was a third party stakeholder, and 8 weeks, 7 eighths of 56 days, they got 315 respondents versus 24 hours, 480. I don't get it. It's not, something isn't adding up here. Don't get it. Anywho, so yeah, there was that. And then I guess too, I just want to share with you, because I have been asked, um, a few times. And so I thought maybe it just might be helpful to, I guess, share my personal thoughts on the national standards. And these, again, they're just my own personal thoughts. They don't represent anything to do with anybody that I'm associated with or not. All of the stuff. Disclaimer, disclaimer, disclaimer. My reading of the national standards is that they're being presented as, we're really proud of these standards. They're, they're the result of robust consultation, which, how could you have robust consultation with 30 people? Anyway, it's robust consultation, and it's the standards are based on available evidence. This is where I've got the issue, and this is where I feel kind of let down. So I don't know who's responsible for this. So obviously I'm not going to point fingers at anybody, but I don't know who put the standards together and who said that they were based on evidence, but they're actually, it's like they looked at the evidence and then said, well, let's just ignore it and put forward what we're going to put forward anyway. And because there was an absence of perhaps a strong presence of other people, advocating and things like that, it feels to me like maybe things got across the line that perhaps shouldn't have, or look like they might, but perhaps shouldn't have. So let me give you some examples so that you know what I'm talking about. The standards have 4 key areas, okay? One of those key areas is ethics. And so the standards imply that counsellors with a diploma are, can't be trusted to be ethical. The standards imply that only people with a university degree understand ethics and can behave ethically. That's the implication when you read it. And as I said, you can go and Google the national standards and read for yourself, and you'll see exactly what I mean. However, I did do research, and I couldn't find anything to back that up. Nothing. The research that was around on, level of qualification and ethics simply said that people who had a tertiary qualification had a better understanding or maybe a deeper knowledge of ethics. However, it was not a predictor of whether or not they were going to behave ethically. So, yeah, that was like one example. Another example is there's a competency area for training. Competency. There's one of the key areas is around training and stuff. So they're sort of saying, look, if you've got a diploma, you're not competent, so you can't go and call yourself a counsellor and all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, there's no evidence to say that if you've got a diploma, you're not good at counselling. There's no evidence to say that if you've got a university degree, you're better at it. There's no evidence to say that people with a uni degree get better outcomes. The evidence does say that the predictors of outcomes in counselling are more about the therapeutic alliance that the client has with the therapist and that the client has with the therapy, right? They're the main predictors. So, again, I don't understand how the standards are being presented as being evidence-based when they specifically contradict the available evidence. There's another one of the key areas in there is around public safety, accountability and public safety. I think it falls under the area of, disciplinary stuff and things like that. And again, the implication is that, if you've got a diploma, you're dangerous or you're more dangerous than somebody who has a university degree. And again, it's not true. There's no evidence that demonstrates that there are more complaints made against people with a diploma than people with a degree. There's nothing like that. So I guess it makes me feel really uneasy to think that, right there, it says right from the beginning that, these are evidence-based, and we're so proud of them, da, 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 da. But if you go and you research, like, line by line, it starts to make you feel like a little bit queasy because you start to think, hang on, no, these aren't based on evidence at all, not the evidence that I'm looking at. And speaking of the evidence too, I would have found it really helpful if they had included a reference list so that we could refer to the evidence that they're basing their draft standards on, because there wasn't any references. Well, that's not true. I'm not telling you the truth there. There were 4 references. One of them was in reference to, like, the process of how standards are developed in Australia. Another one was like a pie graph of, again, something similar. Another one was something from an unrelated field, but it was speaking about standards. And then there was a link to the British Association for Counselling and Psychotherapy, who are not the big peak body in the UK, but obviously, like, they're a membership. And anyway, they just used that to get the definition of a private practice, basically, which is fine. However, they didn't go and reference anything else. And it turns out that the BACP do recognise people with diplomas. And somebody was saying, oh, I used to live in the UK, and um, they really do prefer that you have tertiary educations, and their diplomas go for 4 years and stuff like that. And I had to clarify and say, um, actually, they have level 4 and level 5 diplomas. I appreciate what you're saying, but the reality is they still do accept them. So I'm really sorry, you know. Um, so yeah, I just thought it was so interesting. I mean, I can't even remember writing an essay that didn't have a reference list or a bibliography. And you would imagine, well, I guess I just assume wrongly, it turns out, that there would be a list of available sources for people like me who are interested in this to refer to, um, so I could get a better understanding of, yeah, what they were based on. So anyway, yeah, there's lots of instances. You can go through the document yourself, but it's really hard to find evidence that supports the standards, what they're going for here. Oh, the other thing too is, I guess again, just my thoughts only here, but when you see that they're saying, one of our key areas is making sure that the public is so safe, and they're not at risk because of people that might have a diploma, all of that. You see in the literature there's absolutely no evidence to back this up. So then you start thinking, well, at least I did. I started thinking to myself, okay, so why is this in here when there's no evidence? I mean, you're saying that these are evidence-based. There's no evidence of this. Why are they in here? And I started to think, okay, well, if they're talking about safety in the public and blah, 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 maybe they're not really so focused on the public and like protecting the public as they are gatekeeping the profession. Do you know what I mean? Like maybe this is about gatekeeping the profession. I don't know. Maybe think about that. I don't know. Do you agree? Am I on the right track? Am I on the wrong track? I'd love to know your thoughts. And then I just want to say a couple of things quickly before I finish. And a couple of things really, really quickly are that, yeah, of course, as this petition is gaining momentum, it's getting, some not fantastic comments from people. And I just want to give you like a little bit of guidance around that. First off, if you're somebody who has a diploma and you're following and you see not nice comments written, they're not about you. Don't take it personally. This is a reflection of that person and their own insecurities, or it's a reflection of that person and their own beliefs. When you look into it, you will see probably that some of the people are from PACFA, and there's nothing wrong with that. That's what I'm saying. What I'm saying is have understanding for where they're coming from, because for them, they've had bucket loads of information, support, transparency, communication, all that kind of stuff. So maybe they're just assuming that everybody else did, right? Because that's their experience. So when they're being not very nice, I like to think it's just because they haven't thought about the experience of other people, right? And it happens. Sometimes we just don't give consideration to other people's experiences. So don't get caught up in that. It's their stuff, all right? The other thing too is, if you see people saying that they're members of PACFA and that they, they're trying to just not be very nice and things like that. The other thing is, they really believe in the standards, because to be a member of PACFA, you have to have a tertiary degree. So they haven't got the same depth or level of understanding of the situation, the circumstances, the implications for people who've got lived experience with a diploma, working with it, supervising with it, running a private practice with it, and all those kinds of things. They just don't have your level of understanding. And it's not that it's right or wrong or good or bad. It's just a thing. They just don't. And we can't expect them to. Okay? So that's kind of on us to just, take a breath, understand that there's going to be context for what they're saying. The other thing that I want to say is you don't have to get caught up in it. It's, of course, good for the algorithm anytime somebody leaves something negative on a post, because it keeps the post alive. And when that post has links to a petition, what do you think happens? We get more signatures. So for that reason, I'm more than happy to go and reply to people here and there who've been leaving, not nice comments, because if it's going to help the cause, of course, I'm going to do that. But the other thing too is, if you feel like you would like to reply to any of the comments that are being made, I would just say, doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on, be professional about it, because everything that you put out there in the world becomes marketing. And if you show up in a community and of peers and colleagues and all that kind of stuff, and you're just being like not pleasant, right? That's going to impact your business potentially. Like, people might not want to refer to you, people might lose respect for you, people might not want to, I don't know, have you as a supervisor anymore. All those things can happen because, just like there are people making comments, there are 10 times the amount of people who are just watching it all unfold from the sidelines, and they're taking notes. So for that reason, I would say, if you want to participate in conversations, given that it's a hot topic and people are getting emotional, I would say maybe use the notes in your phone, write down the comment or the reply. I would maybe get somebody to read it over for you, just to make sure that, it reads okay, and, where we can, try and remove the emotion from it. Try and be professional in what you're saying. And I guess the other thing, and you'll see this when you see me replying to them as well, I'm trying to lead by example. I'm trying to be a professional. I'm trying to be writing replies in a way that people would be proud of, in a way that people would be inspired by, in a way that lets people who aren't being very nice save face, right? Because that's how I want to be showing up in the world. I don't want to be getting emotional and doing all of the things and then regretting it later, and, just arguing with people because I'm triggered. I don't know. And so for that reason too, I'm being careful and thoughtful about the comments I reply to and the ones that I don't. So if people have put like a legit concern and they're expressing it, in a way that's clear and logical and, professional and calm and all that kind of stuff, I'll absolutely reply, take things on board, take things into consideration. Like, I'm always saying, if there's something I don't know, let me, because I want to be informed. And if you know something I don't, tell me, because I want to be able to understand what's going on. So I'm very open for that. But if you're going to write just nasty messages because you're with PACFA and you've got a different point of view, for example, or if you're going to write nasty messages because you're just in the mood to write a nasty message, then yeah, you're not going to get a response from me, because I'm not going to waste my time. That's it. So anyway, I hope that this was helpful. I hope it gave you some clarity around the context of the national standards. I hope maybe it's got you thinking about things. As I said, the things I'm thinking about at the moment that are coming up for me right now, it just, like, I cannot wrap my head around how, a few people sharing things on social media got 480 responses versus 56 days over, it was 4 weeks one time, 4 weeks the other. I had a total of 345 responses. Like, I don't get my head around that at all. At all. So yeah, I've got questions around that. The other thing that I've got questions around is, I guess it's not, yeah, is it like a transparency when they don't give you the references? I don't know. Like, how can they say that the standards are based on evidence when you go and you do the research? The evidence says the opposite to what's in the standards. So that's got me thinking as well. Um, and then the other thing that's got me thinking is, yeah, there's no evidence that this is to protect the public. It feels more like maybe what's going on here is insulating the community or gatekeeping the community or something. It's more like a professional thing. I don't know, but I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. And yeah, again, if you've got comments, I'd welcome them every single time. If they're going to be horrible comments, don't expect a response. We're here to be professionals and to try and work through this together. If you are with PACFA, and you have strong beliefs about people with diplomas, I would just say put yourself in their shoes at the moment. Um, Many of them are women, been doing this for a while, later in life. Yeah, it must be very, very scary for them. Imagine if somebody just said to you, hey, by the way, you won't be qualified. You'll have to shut down your business and you won't be able to supervise people. And we're based on evidence, and actually there's no evidence for it. I mean, you'd be pretty concerned as well. Okay. So please just try and be thankful that your membership body was so communicative with you, but also understand that maybe some other people didn't have that same level of support, potentially. From what I can see, doesn't look like they had that same level of support that you did. So maybe just have a little bit of compassion for them. Okay. Anyway, hope this was helpful. Have a beautiful day. Bye.